Well, hey everybody, my name is Tim Stratton. I'm with Freethinking Ministries, and again, I'm in a room full of my friends, a whole bunch of youth pastors that have a desire just to get to understand apologetics a bit better, so that we can all impact those that we have an influence over, so that we can all answer questions when teenagers or college students or whoever you are come to each one of us. So it's awesome just being here in this group, being a part of this group, being in this room with you guys. I wish you could all be with us during the conversations that happen after these videos, after these recordings. It is truly a place where iron sharpens iron. But if you're here watching on Facebook today, thank you for joining us. And I do encourage you to get this book, The Defense Never Rests, by William Lane Craig and Joseph Tang, and follow along with us. We've got several arguments, and we're studying apologetics and theology, just trying to understand how to answer these tough questions about God, and just how do we know God exists, and then once we figure out that God exists, just how we can understand Him better. So anyway, today we're going to be discussing something called the design argument, also known as the teleological argument, also known as, probably best known as the fine-tuning argument. Now this is an argument, it's not really one of my go-to arguments. I don't use it all the time. My favorite arguments that I really rely on are probably the Kalam cosmological argument. I love that thing. The moral argument. I love that argument more and more all the time. We're going to, I think, discuss that one next week. Obviously, the free-thinking argument. I love that one. And the resurrection of Jesus, the historical argument for the resurrection of Jesus. Those are kind of my go-tos, my Mount Rushmore of arguments, I guess, my top four. But this one's powerful. I don't use it a lot, and as I was preparing today, I realized that I've never written an article on Freethinking Ministries about this argument. I've referenced it a few times, but I've never done an article on it. So stay tuned. I'm going to have to hammer that one out here one of these days. Well, you can see a house of cards here. Now, what if I told you, as we walked into this room today, we just saw this house of cards. It's not that big, but it's still impressive. I couldn't do that. I've seen some of these houses of cards that are more like skyscrapers, right? They're huge. And so imagine that we walked into a room and we see a house of cards standing on a table like this. Now for this house of cards to stand, they've got to all fit together just right, in just the right way. And we can see that if you moved any of these cards or nudged them just a little bit, a tiny bit, then the house would fall. This house would be destroyed. Again, if you've seen some of these big ones, just imagine, you just nudge one of these cards. The whole thing is destroyed. The whole thing falls down. Well, here's a question. We just walked into this room and we see this house of cards here. The question is this: how did these cards all get together to form this house? How did it happen? Well, we can only think of three possible answers to consider. We have three possible options. Number one, it had to happen. It's necessary that a house of cards would exist like this. Number two, it was just an accident, a happy accident. It was by luck that this house of cards just happens to be existing in this manner right now. Or option three, someone designed or made this house fit together, much like an intelligent engineer of sorts. Well, what's the inference to the best explanation? Let's consider the first option. Answer A. It had to happen. Well, let's ask the question. Did these cards have to fit together in this exact way? Of course not. Each card could have been in a different position, right? It could have been in a different position. There are many different ways the cards could have been arranged. They didn't have to fit together to form this kind of house, right? The cards could have been lying in a deck like this. They could have been scattered around in a mess. They could have been in the form of a different house. They didn't have to be in this form of a card house. They could have had a different shape to it altogether. So to say it had to happen or it's necessary that this house of cards is existing like this, that's not a good answer. That's not a good explanation. We can rule it out as at least probably not true. So let's consider the second option. Answer B, it was just an accident. Just a lucky, happy accident. Well, what if I said something tossed all those cards on the table and the house of cards just formed by accident? Would you believe me? Why wouldn't you believe me?
It's too improbable.
That's right, it's too improbable. You wouldn't believe me because it's too good to be true. I mean, all the cards just happened to fit together in just the right way. Just this right pattern to make this house. Too good to be true, too improbable. There might be other ways to build a house of cards, but they all have to fit in just the right way too. Well, what if I said, no, it really was an accident. Someone was tossing those cards for years and years and years. And finally, luckily, a house of cards did get formed just like this today. Would you believe me? You're still shaking your head no. Why wouldn't you believe me? I mean, somebody's been doing this for years and years and years, taking all these cards and just throwing them. And, I mean, after billions of tries, this happened. You still wouldn't believe me? Why not? No, I think you're right. You'd be justified in thinking I'm delusional if I said that. Hey, I've been tossing these cards for years and finally look what happened. Pretty cool, huh? You still wouldn't believe me. Even if the cards were tossed for years or billions of years, it's overwhelmingly improbable that a house of cards would form. Ever. It's highly probable that every toss of the cards would have produced a mess, not a stack, or not a house of cards like this. So we would never believe this answer if someone tried to use it for other things that happen. So, I mean, consider this. Let's say you went to Vegas and you went to a casino and you're going to try your hand at some poker. So you sit down at the poker table and this guy keeps winning hand after hand, right? You're not winning nothing. He's winning everything every time. Would you expect cheating is going on? Right? That would be the rational inference. He's cheating. But what if he says this? Oh, look, I know you just accused me of cheating, but you don't understand. I've been playing poker for years and years and years since I was a little kid, and this has never happened, so it's got to happen sometime. And today just happens to be the day where I'm winning every hand. Oh, would you be like, oh, my mistake, sorry for accusing you of cheating. I didn't realize that you've been playing for years and years and years, and today just happens to be your lucky day. Would you do that? No, of course not. You would still accuse him of cheating. Well, maybe he took this tactic and he said, oh, well, look, I know you just accused me of cheating, but you don't understand. Look at all these other hundreds and hundreds of people playing. Somebody's got to get lucky enough to win game after game after game, or hand after hand. Would you take that seriously? Of course not. You would still be justified in accusing him of cheating. And moreover, think of this house of cards here. We've got no reason to think that these cards were tossed many times by something anyway. It's just making up the answer without evidence. That's called offering an ad hoc response. That's not a good response. All right, let's go to the fourth option here. Just because it's possible, or the fourth point, just because it's possible that something happened doesn't mean that it did happen or probably happened. I mean, after all, it's possible to take this deck of cards right here. It's logically possible for me to take this deck of cards and to throw it, toss it on the table here, and for it to form that house. It's logically possible. It's not probable, but sure, it's logically possible. But hey, since it's possible, let's see what happens. Still didn't work. Well, we can see that answers A and B aren't true. That is to say, they are not good explanations. We need a better explanation. It's obvious that answer C is true. That is to say, answer C, the third option here, is the inference to the best explanation. So now, after we understand how cards work, let's discuss the design argument. Scientists say that life equals living things. Life is made of matter. It takes in food and energy. By the way, this is a great response against abortion, right? Because even at the moment of conception, this is true of the preborn person here. For more on that, see my article at freethinkingministries.com called Pro-Choice, the Wrong Side of History, Science, and Logic. Anyway, scientists say that life equals living things. Life is made of matter, takes in food and energy, metabolism, it reproduces or can reproduce, it makes babies or copies of itself, and it adapts to the environment. Some examples of life equals plants and animals, bacteria. Now here's a question. Is living matter special compared to ordinary matter? Is there something that's more special about a dog than dirt? I think so, and scientists think so also. In fact, there's something special. There's something so special about living matter that's why SETI exists. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. They're looking for life in the universe, and they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars looking for this life. There's something special about living matter. Now, intelligent life is even more special than living matter because it can think deeply. It can discover the laws of nature. It can discover the laws of logic, these abstract ideas. Think about what it means to think rationally, to engage in the process of rationality. I like to say, if you engage in the process of rationality, then you have the ability, the power, okay, the ability to think of and about abstract ideas, to think of and about competing hypotheses, the ability to deliberate between competing hypotheses and infer and affirm the best explanation of all the data after comparing all the data to the abstract laws of logic. I mean, if you can't do that, then you're not going to be a rational thinker, at least in a deep way. I mean, yeah, my dog, Rondo, he possesses some means to, he possesses some ability to reason, I suppose, means to end reasoning. But he doesn't, I've never seen my dog Rondo utilize the law of the excluded middle to infer the best explanation or something like that. So we are rational animals, so to speak. There's something different about us. So, like I said, SETI, they're trying to find not just other life in the universe, but is there life that's like us, that can think about these things? Laws of science, laws of nature, laws of logic. Well, scientists have discovered many laws of nature. These laws describe the universe, or what the universe is like, and how matter in the universe behaves. We can write these laws as equations. For example, the force of gravity. Now, here you see, let me still get this out of the way here. You got the Earth and the Moon and the distance. Now, I am, you see me here? Am I in this? I'm good? Okay. I'm no mathematician, I'm no physicist, so I'm going to try to do my best. But to understand the force of gravity, you take the mass of the Earth times the mass of the Moon, you divide it by the distance squared. And then you take it times g. What is g? Well, it's a very special number. It's 0.00000000006673. Exactly that number. It's a very special number. Now, there's many of these laws of nature that have these very special numbers in them. And scientists know that these special numbers could have been bigger, they could have been smaller. They don't have to be exactly this kind of number. They could be different. You could change any one of these numbers. They're not necessary. Scientists have found that in order for life to exist in the universe, these numbers have to all fit together in just the right way. Just like a house of cards. You tweak or nudge one of the cards, it starts to fall apart. It's supposed to all fall apart. Okay, there you go. You made it too good, Mike. All right. But look, you tweak a card, and the whole thing can fall apart, especially those big honking ones that you've seen that are more like skyscrapers. You tweak one of those, the whole, just disaster. The whole thing's going to fall apart. But if they were even, here's a good philosophical term or scientific term, you know, a teensy-weensy bit. if you nudge it just a teensy-weensy bit compared to what they could be, you couldn't have any life at all. So this means the universe is extremely special. It's very special. Their accuracy is extremely precise. For example, 0.0000000000000001%, much more precise than what you need to build a house of cards. So if you think a house of cards is impressive and all the fine-tuning that has to go on there to build a little house of cards, that pales in comparison to the universe and the initial conditions of the early universe. For example, if the initial conditions of the Big Bang weren't extremely fine-tuned on a razor's edge with a whole bunch, not just this one, but a whole bunch of these numbers being exactly as they are, not only would there not be any life within the universe, but there wouldn't be anything in the universe at all. If that special number of gravity alone, think of this as one card, okay? Just one of these cards. If this is just one card right here, and that was tweaked just a little bit, there's no house of cards. There's no universe of cards. There's nothing in the universe. If that special number of gravity was a little stronger right after the Big Bang, right after the initial Big Bang, it would collapse back in on itself. We wouldn't exist. If that number was increased and it was weaker, or I should say if the force of gravity was weaker, right after the Big Bang, it would fly apart so rapidly that the stars wouldn't exist. Carbon would not form. Or all matter would just be made of one element. That's just if one card was tweaked. Just one card. And there's a whole bunch of cards in that deck that form that house of cards, that universe of cards. If you think a house of cards is impressive, it pales in comparison to the fine-tuning involved in the initial conditions of the Big Bang so that the universe could exist and life in the universe could exist. There's only 3 reasons why these special numbers all fit together in just the right way. We've gone through this before discussing the cards. Let's go through it again. Why think that all of these numbers have to be fine-tuned exactly in this way, exactly right, so that we can exist today? Well, number 1, it's either necessary, it has to happen, or it had to happen just that way. Second option, it was just an accident. It was by chance or by luck, just a happy accident. Or the third option, someone designed the universe so that these numbers and the laws that describe it all fit together just right for life, including intelligent life. As we noted when we considered the house of cards, reasons 1 and 2 are not good. So C is true. That is to say, someone designed the universe that way is the inference to the best explanation. That is, the best explanation is intelligent design. Let's continue. So, the best explanation is that someone made the universe just right for life to exist in it. Let's call this someone, what should we call it? G. If you've been following us for the last couple weeks, that's what we do here. Well, we don't want to jump to any conclusions. So let's call this someone who made the universe just right for life to exist in it, G. What are some rational inferences that we can conclude about G? Well, one, G is very powerful and very intelligent, since it designed the entire universe and everything in it precisely right for life, so that we could be here today having this conversation. 2, G designed the universe, and the universe is described by the laws of nature. So therefore, G designed the laws of nature. If G designed the laws of nature, then G is not and cannot be described by the laws of nature. Remember the Coulomb cosmological argument that we discussed last week. The cause of nature must be something other than nature. It must be supernatural. It's the same thing. Finally, because G designed the universe, whatever G is cannot be part of the universe. So G is not made of matter, because matter exists within the universe. If G is someone who is not made of matter, then G is spirit, because that's just what being an immaterial thing means. Someone who is not made of matter is a spirit. If you don't like that word, just say an immaterial mind. But there's a problem. Or is there a problem? Well, someone might say, well, G didn't design the universe because you have to tell me who designed G first. I won't even consider the fact that G created the universe until you can tell me who designed G. But we don't need to explain first who designed G. I think there was a Transformers movie where they found a spaceship on the dark side of the moon. Is that right? Can anybody tell me that? I don't know. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's keep that in mind. What if we sent astronauts up to the moon and they walked over to the dark side, to the dark side of the moon, and they found this huge alien spaceship? I mean, it's obviously not something from NASA, and something probably not from Earth. So, we might not know who made, where, or what planet that's from, or what alien. We don't even know if we've never even had evidence of aliens, right? SETI still hasn't found them, but we found the spaceship on the dark side of the moon. Would we be rational? Especially, we know that this technology is not from Earth, okay? So are we then rational to conclude, wow, some kind of extraterrestrial intelligence is out there and landed a spaceship here? Would that be a rational inference? Yeah, it sure would. Now what if we don't know who made the aliens? Does that mean, since I don't know where they came from, I am not going to even consider the fact that aliens landed the spaceship on the dark side of the moon? No, it doesn't work that way. That's incoherent reasoning to say, hey, if I don't know who made the person who made the spaceship, then I'm not even going to consider the fact that somebody made the spaceship. It just doesn't work that way. We don't need to explain first who designed G. In the same way, we don't need to first explain who designed G if we have evidence that G designed the universe. We might not know where the aliens came from or what made them, but that does not mean that they didn't make the spaceship. And by the way, maybe G, whatever G is, doesn't need a designer. Why? Well, because G is a spirit, an immaterial mind, as we saw with the Kalam and the Leibnizian arguments. An immaterial mind. A spirit. And a spirit is a very simple thing. It isn't made of matter or energy, which is described by the laws of nature. You see, a spirit has no special numbers like this to explain. So the universe is made of matter, energy, and is described by the laws of nature. And again, let me bring up the Kalam. Whatever caused time to begin, by definition, is beginningless, and therefore must be uncaused. You think about that. It's an unmoved mover. So by definition, whatever caused time to begin, or whatever caused the clock to start ticking, whatever caused that first ticking of the first second hand, whatever caused the first thing to change, is beginningless. And if you're beginningless, then by definition, nothing can cause you to come into existence. So whatever caused the first change must be uncaused. But that's a different argument. We'll go back to the Kalam for that. Anyway, you can't keep asking this question forever. You have to stop somewhere. Like I said, we've seen this before with the Kalam argument. So it's just best to stop at G. It's the simplest explanation. So, who do you think G is? Does G sound like someone you've heard before? All my fellow youth pastors, can you think of a good name for G? God, thank you. Okay. Now, here's a side note. We've shown that an intelligent designer fine-tuned the universe and actually fine-tuned the initial conditions of the Big Bang so that humans can exist today. Now, this doesn't prove something about God, but I think it points to something about his knowledge. And I'm going to say it points. It's not a prover, but it might be a prover. Let me think about this. But it's definitely a pointer towards something I call God's middle knowledge. And even if this isn't exactly middle knowledge, I think it helps us understand God's middle knowledge. In middle knowledge, we're discussing God's omniscience. If God's omniscient, then he knows everything that could, would, and will happen. Right? That could happen and will happen, and everything that would happen if situations or scenarios or circumstances happen to be different. He knows it all. He's omniscient. And I think that understanding the fine-tuning argument at least helps us grasp God's knowledge. If God has to, there's all these different cards that he's got to get just right. He's got to fine-tune the initial conditions of the Big Bang, fine-tune them on a razor's edge just right, so that everything that happens naturally in the universe following the Big Bang is guaranteed to happen. So if he knew that for us to exist today, he's got to fine-tune the initial conditions of the Big Bang just right. Think about what God knows before the universe came into existence. He's got to know something will happen, and possibly he has to know what would happen if he fine-tuned the initial conditions just right. I'm going to write more on that soon. I've actually had a discussion about this with Dr. Craig, William Lane Craig, about a year ago. Especially when you start factoring in some quantum mechanics and things like that. I think the fine-tuning argument actually is a strong evidence or pointer towards God's middle knowledge. And we're going to talk a lot more about that later. But if you go to my website, you're going to see me talking about middle knowledge and Molinism all the time. I think the fine-tuning argument actually supports this case. But I'll be writing an article on that hopefully soon, and we will continue that discussion. So, with that said, I haven't touched a Bible yet today, have I? But let me do it now. Let's all praise God for designing the universe beautifully for us to live in it. God, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. Psalm 139:14. Have a great day.